Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes, and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. I am so excited today because I have a really intriguing conversation set up for you with a longtime colleague and friend, Yannick Schilly, who has spent his entire career working on building the factory of the future. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Altx Consulting.
In global business, you rarely get second chances. Opportunity never favors the unprepared, the ill-equipped, or the inexperienced. When that business-defining moment comes, you can't afford to miss your shot. You'll need experienced partners by your side. If you only get one shot to disrupt the giants, you'll need a skilled team to become the rival they don't expect. If you only get one shot at developing a breakthrough technology, who can back your vision with experience and a proven track record? If you only get one shot to modernize your operation, how can you bring your business up to date without losing your edge? Altx empowers you and your team with the competitive edge you need, providing the business strategy, innovation, and operational excellence support you need to perform at the highest level on a global scale. When opportunity knocks, will you be ready? Altx, amplifier for industry champions.
We have an intriguing question to answer today. When it comes to building the factory of the future, does size really matter? Never before in the history of mankind has the pace of innovation and technological acceleration been faster than it is today. We are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. I have learned so much from today's guest, all about digitalization and the connectivity of things, the emergence of so-called cyber physical systems. All these things will profoundly change industry and create completely new dimensions and solutions that will reshape and transform manufacturing and supply chains. Robotics and automated systems are becoming intelligent. Machine learning and artificial intelligence are no longer outrageous science fiction ideas or academic concept papers. The new reality is a fast-paced global manufacturing and supply chain industrial world. Today, new factories are being built with the latest technologies, not only in advanced economies, but also in emerging industrial countries for mass production environments. No one can afford to ignore this transformation. My guest today, Yannick Schilly, is the president and CEO of Altx Consulting. He wrote the foreword for the first of my 3-part book series on modern manufacturing, which you can find a link to in the show notes. In the foreword, Yannick wrote this: "It took humans thousands of years to go from an agriculture-driven society to a modern industrial, technical, and scientific society. In just 300 years, our world's population grew from less than 700 million people to 7 billion. This development was supported by technology and innovation. Mass production had to be invented in order to support that development during the second industrial revolution. The Industrial Revolution and the innovations of this new era changed the world radically and for the better. Millions of people came out of poverty, got access to healthcare and education, and can now live a good life, build loving families, invest in exciting careers, travel the world, and enjoy leisure time. About 100 years ago, Henry Ford and Frederick Taylor, together with the very first management consulting firms, invented the principles of scientific management and industrial engineering, bringing the Ford T to mass production. In about 100 years, our world went from thousands of factories to millions of factories. Competition became global. The survival of the fittest concept became a metaphor and a new paradigm for the corporate world. Like athletes and champions, weak companies cannot win in a global, permanent, ultra-competitive environment. Only the strongest will be prepared for changes of the political, economic, technological, and social fast paced evolution. Companies will continue to be challenged, requiring them to permanently innovate and disrupt not only their competition, but also themselves. The bar continues to be raised. I'm really excited to welcome Yannick. You can tell he has a lot of knowledge after writing that. I'm so excited to dive into a deeper discussion about how this evolution of modern manufacturing affects small to medium-sized companies and how they can compete with the larger big budget companies when it comes to smart factories. So welcome to the show, Yannick.
Hello, Michelle. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you here. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're so busy, but I really appreciate having you here.
I'm really glad to be with you. I really enjoyed the past collaborations and writing the forward for you ebook, and I'm sure this will be a great experience today. So I'm looking forward for that.
Thank you. Me too. I've been looking forward to it for a long time because I know about your knowledge. But first, I want you to tell the listeners a little bit about your background and experience and explain to them why you are an expert on Industry 4.0.
Thank you again, Michelle. So first of all, the audience will recognize that I have an accent, and people at times are confused with my accent. Some people recognize a French accent and some people recognize a German accent. And both are right. There is a good reason for that. I'm a French person from the northeastern part of France in the region of Strasbourg. So I grew up in that border region between France and Germany and in a multilingual and multicultural family. And I really embraced both cultures and languages from a very early stage. I went to school in France, but started my career early on in a production environment. So I'm really a kid of a production and supply chain environment. Grew up in that world of industry with a beautiful company called Festo, a German automation champion. So joined that company very early on in 94. Did my entire apprenticeship in that company and learned really the industry from the ground. And I'm really proud of that because this gave me the knowledge and the foundation to really understand everything what happens in factory, from what happens in the operation, what problems the operators are struggling with, but also what problems the technicians and the supervisors, the managers are struggling with. At that time, the company is still a family-owned company and has a great culture, great values, very innovative, and really at the forefront of innovation and technology. Nowadays, really leading this Industry 4.0 movements, which we'll talk more about today. During my early years in production, I continued to educate myself, did a lot of learning while working, studied, did an industrial engineering degree, and I really enjoyed that knowledge transfer of being at work during the day and studying at night because there was a direct knowledge transfer. It was a tough time. I had a young family at the time. Combining work and increasing demanding jobs and challenges, did a lot of product development at the time, new product introduction. So from production, I went into the industrial engineering team. We did a lot of customized solutions development for key accounts in Europe, beautiful companies in different industry segments, whether it was the food and beverage or agriculture. Like we worked on a very interesting automation for the farm of the future, milking robot applications, fascinating. You can see these things on YouTube, and it's amazing how the world of a farmer in the Netherlands or in Europe or in the US today looks like. It's very high tech and it's very smart. The Industry 4.0 finds these applications everywhere. So from new product development, a new product introduction, I became a team leader. I had an entire industrial engineering team and a lot of engineers working on product costing, working on production planning, on quality control, doing a lot of process planning and risk assessments for industries like automotive, for the new products. And I had the chance to come around in Europe and to see beautiful companies, beautiful factories, very advanced manufacturing environments, but also very outdated manufacturing environments. From there, because I was really well connected in the entire global R&D environment, in the corporate headquarters, in the Stuttgart region, but also in the world of the factories and the supply chain, in 2009, I was offered a role in China. This was really an opportunity of a lifetime, of course. My family and I, we have always been passionate about international travel and about the world and its diversity, its people, its cultures, its food, and traveling. So when I got that opportunity to go to China, for me, it was really no hesitation. I had to do a little bit of convincing work at home
Right.
to convince my wife to join me. 2010, we moved our young family. My son was just a little bit more than a year at that time, to Jinan, Shandong, a huge region, a lot of population, and also a lot of industry. The role at that time was to completely transform a company Festo had acquired. It had to be integrated, had to be prepared for the future, and to develop the future of the company's supply chain footprint in China and in Asia. So spent 4.5 years there. It was a fantastic time professionally, but also personally, learned a lot. I was leading a large organization and we had a big agenda. So I had to work with the people speaking different languages. They didn't speak a ton of English at that time. So we had that time to work with interpreters and everything to get the job done. And we had a lot of job to get done, building new buildings, transforming technology, upgrading and updating technologies, changing material flows, educating people on processes, establishing quality management systems, making sure our ERP systems were communicating between China and Germany. So a lot of coordination, establishing parallel production, new production lines, replacing technologies, implementing performance systems and lean management system so that we get it right first time right. And it was a very successful initiative, a very successful project, a fantastic team. From there, I went back to Europe for a year, leading a major portfolio strategy initiative the company was working on with the top leadership team, top department heads, all the global VPs of the organization. And from there, I took my way to the United States, having a chance to work on another continent, another country. And for many of us in Europe, the United States is always a big dream. So we came to the US in 2014 to move a factory from the Long Island, New York region to bring it to the Cincinnati region, which is more central. The company had outgrown the capacity in New York, and Cincinnati offers a great place for that. So this was, again, a fascinating learning experience, acting as the chief operating officer for Festo in North America. Over the course of 25 years, I learned a lot from the world of industry, designing product lines, designing products, industrializing products in modern environments, the needs and challenges of industry partners, of manufacturers, but also designing and building factories, relocating factories, and every time using the opportunity to bring in the best in terms of technology and innovation, but also not forgetting to bring process and people along the way and developing plans, starting with a kind of master plan for what needs to be done so that we don't get lost in what often can be a multi-year initiative. Yeah, and then also learning to execute and to deliver on time, in full, in quality. So gave me great leadership education. So after 25 years in industry with a great company, a company with a really bright future through the innovation competence they have. And you, Michelle, you have discovered some of those innovations in our past interactions. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur at the core for a very long time. I needed my next challenge. So entrepreneurship was really what I was looking for. And this was inspiring. This was the next big thing I needed to get me up in the morning. I was really excited with a business plan. I had a vision and a concept I had in mind, and what we developed together with my founding business partner, Anne Capel, on helping international middle market companies, which don't have the size of Festo or bigger organizations and all the same resources, helping them to still operate internationally in a manufacturing and supply chain environment, but also help them to understand how do we get ready for the future in a high-tech environment, and how do we move in a smart way from where we are today to where we need to be. Many providers in the marketplace will offer robots and automation and technology. Others are offering IT systems, software. But what companies also need is, first of all, a kind of plan. Where are we heading to? What kind of transformation do we need in our supply chain and in our factories? And how to approach that in a way so that it's not overwhelming. We are not frozen and scared by what's in front of us. Cutting it into little pieces, what we can show, what we can also finance, and what makes sense in terms of an integrated and holistic approach. So in 2018, we founded Altx Consulting with the ambition and the goal to develop a global firm. So nowadays we have offices in Europe and in Asia, and we are very proud and glad that our value value proposition has found a lot of good resonance from the middle market organizations we were looking to serve. So they have needs we had anticipated. We have the talent they need to help them elevate their teams and amplify their teams to solve complex challenges they never had to solve before. So probably they wouldn't need us in long term, but buying just what they need to help them solve their most critical challenge is really a joy for us to help them to solve their most pressing pain points and problems. And it develops long-term partnerships, long-term relationships, and long-term friendships. So we are blessed to live in that international context, in that very high-tech and advanced context of the manufacturing of tomorrow. Yeah, thanks again, Michelle, for having me today.
Absolutely. I mean, with a background like that, you can imagine we have a lot to talk about. I just want to say, first of all, I love how international you are. You actually have an international family as well. And no one that listens to this show can say anything about accents, because we all have accents, right? No one has a stronger accent than I do. When you're from Alabama, an accent is no big deal. We're absolutely proud to have this international outlook on what companies are doing all over the world. I love your story, and thank you for laying that out for us, because it just shows how much you know and how much experience you have. The first time we met was, 4 or 5 years ago. And I came to the Festo factory in Ohio, and I've also been to the Festo factory in Germany. I will never forget this, because you told me about the Bionic Learning Network, which is, I'll give the short version, then I'll let you explain more about it. But Festo developed these robotic animals. And it's so fascinating because they studied animal behaviors and then put those behaviors into these innovative robots, like just how ants communicate with each other. They have these ant robots that look like ants, and then they behave like ants. They communicate with each other. They build together. Tell us a little bit more about this, because I think it's absolutely remarkable and fascinating.
Yeah, happy to. And Michelle, I really love that bionic animals and the little zoo Festo is creating. Really cool. And even kids love it. But they are really solving real research and development challenges, completing and supporting an entire R&D organization. We can learn a lot from nature. And this is at the core of this initiative. Nature has evolved over billions of years, and human species have evolved over millions of years. And often nature is able to solve very complex engineering and tricky challenges. So from each animal, you can learn a lot, from the spider, from the kangaroos. Let's pick the example of the kangaroo. The kangaroo is deploying a lot of energy when the kangaroo is jumping, and the kangaroo has also the ability to recover some of the energy deployed while landing. And nowadays, in a context of global warming, in a context of sustainability and generations having a lot more awareness about all those topics, energy recovery is a big topic. And energy recovery, today we see what's going on in automotive with the transformation of the combustion engine to an electric car and to smart automobiles. The entire industry, not just the automobile, needs to be more energy efficient. So learning about what is the best nature can do to be energy efficient and how to translate that into new innovations and applications for motion applications in the world of automation. Yeah, and that's just one example, but there are many.
I have links to some articles that I wrote about it. And then I also have some links to some YouTube videos that Festo posted that you will just be fascinated by this. I'll put these in the show notes so that you can just click there and go check it out. But it's really cool. There's robotic elephants, like elephant trucks. There's robotic birds that are actually drones flying through factories. It is really fascinating and really clever. And it's just one great example of what a very innovative company is doing to make things smarter in manufacturing. I'm just wondering, why would you leave such an innovative company? I mean, you talked about just wanting to be an entrepreneur, but tell us a little bit more about why you would leave such a company to work for smaller companies and help them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get asked that question many times. I spent nearly 25 years with an amazing and fascinating company, but I also wanted to learn more about other industries, about many other companies, and bringing to smaller organizations the knowledge and the techniques and the methods with a group of very senior industry experts like me and industry leaders, former industry leaders from the automation sector and other industry sectors to middle market organizations, maybe their first international expansion expansions, building a first plant abroad, entering the US market and avoiding the pitfalls and the risks of losing a lot of money and time, learning from best practice examples of how to get it right straight, or entering the Chinese market. These are all very complex endeavors where when you are a company in the range of 100 million or 500 million or even a billion, you did not do that so many times or even all the time, where large organizations have entire resources, a lot of experience on how to approach new markets, how to develop international supply chains, how to build factories and supply chains abroad, and how to develop and design such strategies, how to evaluate financial concepts and models of what's the best strategy and what should we really do. So guiding and coaching entrepreneurs, business owners, family-owned companies in that middle market segment is something what I found really inspiring and enriching intellectually, but also I have the feeling I can make a bigger impact with that, and our organization can make a bigger impact with that. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a joy and a satisfaction to help organizations solve complex problems and offering an alternative to the very large consulting firms in the marketplace. Yeah, if you named McKinsey initially from an article I wrote
Right.
some time ago. And of course, the large organizations have access to the BCGs of the world, the Bains, the McKinseys. But often there is a big, first of all, investment gap because not everybody can afford those organizations, especially when it takes some involvement over multiple days, multiple weeks, or multiple months working on some large initiatives. And often those large firms don't have the appetite to serve smaller organizations because they think the big tickets are more in the Fortune 500 or 1,000 companies or Fortune 50 organizations. Yeah? And we wanted to close that gap and help organizations operating internationally, being family owned or publicly owned, but smaller in size, and helping them to amplify and elevate their teams to accelerate their development.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great mission for your company. In the intro, I asked the question, when it comes to building the factory of the future, does size matter? Well, you have to think, okay, the bigger companies, yes, they can be innovative. They can build robots that look like animals, and they can incorporate augmented reality, and they can incorporate all these sensors and different things. But what can these small to medium sized companies do to compete with these larger corporations? Because they want to integrate in Industry 4.0 too.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. And my short answer is no, size doesn't matter. You don't need to be a company with hundreds of factories and multi-billions of revenue to think, talk, and act on Industry 4.0. I even think it would be a mistake to not learn about it and to not look into it, because competitiveness matters. I will take a few examples. If you were a manufacturing organization in the sector of hydraulics 20 years ago in the United States, maybe you were competing with a company out of Cleveland, with a company out of Alabama, with a company out of Houston, Texas. Nowadays, whether you are large or small, you are competing with the world. Your competitors, you might not even know them, may be in Ningbo, China, or they may be in Vietnam, or they may be in Brazil, or they may be in the southern part of France. We don't know that, but the customer often has access to the information through the internet and through a more and more interconnected and global space where customers are educated and find the best products and the best services at the best performance and price. So competition is changing. And first of all, we need to be aware about the competitive environments we are moving in. You also mentioned corporate Darwinism and the concept of the survival of the fittest in a corporate world. And something I feel really strong about, because this is really about that. Permanently pushing the bar, increasing the quality and the innovation of our products and services to serve our clients with what they need, anticipating their needs, but then also learning, innovating in our production and supply chain processes to permanently eliminate waste, reduce waste, and be more efficient at what we do. Because if we don't do that, somebody else will do it. And this is how competition evolves. Permanently pushing the limits is really key, and not being satisfied with a certain status quo and developing a kind of organizational complacency, what at the end will be devastating. Yeah, so permanently challenging every dimension of the organization. I have seen small companies with 100 employees or 200 employees being below $100 million in sales revenue, having thought about how to use elements of automation, how to be smart about automation. It's about learning to also analyze from all these buzzwords from an Industry 4.0 environment, what are the elements which are really important for me now? What will make an impact? What will make a difference? How will I be more competitive? And what can I just ignore? Yeah. So I think the big ones, the Fords and GMs and the Apples and the Fortune 50 organizations, they will have to think about everything, about blockchain, about artificial intelligence, and about everything. But the smaller ones, they can be more picky and choose exactly what's the best fit for us right now. But also keeping in mind that they develop a modern IT environment and infrastructure where they will be able to scale and to embrace new technologies as they move on. If they become really good with automation, maybe the next thing they will consider is the use of augmented reality for their maintenance or service processes. But it's a step-by-step journey. Like every journey in industry, it's step-by-step. So no, size really doesn't matter. Even small manufacturing organizations should permanently look at what kind of technologies in hardware, in software do we need to embrace, but also making sure that they develop the processes, the mindset, the knowledge and the skills for their people so that they can make the best use of that. Yeah, I like to say it's no point to have a sports car but not have the driver who will be able to maximize the use of those assets.
I understand the advice that you're giving to small to medium-sized companies. You're saying, look, start with something simple and then grow into it and then graduate to the next step. But give me an example of something small. Like, are there just small little sensors they can use at first? The big thing is embrace it and then try something that you can afford that will work and see how it goes. Is that kind of what you're saying?
At times, looking at the history and the evolution of the world of the factory really helps to understand what's the evolution in the past. So the factories 50 years ago, they did use very little computer systems and IT systems. So the world of the IT has changed tremendously over the past decades. The use of automation, while initially used in really large factories in electronics or in automotive, nowadays you find automation, robots, cobots, and all these kind of technologies everywhere, also in the smallest manufacturing factories, because there is a pressure for costs and there is a need for quality and process repeatability, what we humans cannot deliver in the same consistency like an automated system. So it's not about smaller hardware or smaller sensors or bigger, depending on the size of the organization. It's maybe the pace on how do we embrace some building blocks of Industry 4.0, and it's also the sequence. What do we need to adapt first? And this will depend on what kind of industries are we in, what kind of products are we manufacturing, where are our factories? Is it more in a high cost country like the United States or Germany, France, or is it more a low cost country? Analyzing where we are coming from, analyzing what are the first steps to do, and then to your point, like in life, let's graduate one step after the next, and let's not try to do everything at the same time.
So I think the takeaway there is that a small to medium-sized company doesn't have to incorporate every single smart technology there is out there all at once. And with huge investment, they can take small steps, and your company helps them to build a roadmap to forecast how they go about doing that, right?
Absolutely. That's the point. To develop a roadmap and to develop a journey, it's always good to understand the status quo. Yeah, what makes us strong today? Where are we weak? Understanding how competition is doing and what kind of investments they have made, what kind of innovations they have made, what our customers are expecting, what they would like to see, starting with an assessment, developing a roadmap, and then starting on the execution of such a roadmap. Once it has been financially evaluated, when all stakeholders are on board, executive level board, often also having checked some elements of a strategy with the team, with the employees, and getting the acceptance and the conviction of the organization, this is the right thing to do.
So you are always on top of these manufacturing trends. And I think that's part of what your clients pay you for, is to understand the trends that are coming around the corner. What are you seeing right now? What are the big manufacturing trends for 2021 with regard to Industry 4.0?
That's a great question. And we spoke about buzzwords a little bit earlier. And it's really important to differentiate what companies really need and why it might be more elements everybody will be working on in 2025 and 2026 or beyond. So here size matters because the very large organizations, of course, will be at the forefront of technology. If you look at the Tesla factory today, if you look at any kind of automobile manufacturing environment, they will have already implemented many elements and they will embrace now artificial intelligence, blockchain, virtual reality, using a lot of digitalization in their sales business processes with e-commerce platforms. They will have embraced very digital R&D environments with digital twins for their factories, with digital twins for their products, because that visualization and that simulation potential offers a lot of perspective for communication, looking at very complex models, doing digital simulation because it's more cost effective and efficient than to try to simulate and go directly in a real world environment with physical prototypes. So they will be at the forefront of that, and it's not what the smaller organization needs. Trends for 2021, depending on the size. Automation, we have seen that COVID-19 in 2020 has given a boost in terms of automation to industries and manufacturers who still thought we don't need that and we don't need to do too much. So the pandemic and the global sanitary crisis has shown again that it's really important to be prepared for whatever happens. It's back to that concept of corporate fitness and resilience. If you have, of course, still a very manual environment where people are working shoulder to shoulder on assembly line, well, you have a hard time when something like COVID-19 hits. This is pushing them into automation and robotization. How can we keep our factories running? How can we continue to serve our clients, even if we need to do new shift models, a lot of remote working? So this certainly gives a push into automation, robotics. And of course, then they also need to graduate their employees to learn new skills of maintaining these complex systems and programming complex mechatronic systems and working in a more high-tech environment. Yeah?
I think that's a great answer. And it's true that this COVID-19 pandemic that's hit the entire globe has forced us to embrace technology. There's no question about it. That's sometimes these trends come out of necessity rather than trends. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. But do you think that most companies are effectively preparing for the future?
I don't think that most of the companies are effectively preparing for the future. I think a few companies are really on top of the game. They are early adopters of new technologies. They are doing all the right things on analyzing what's next and how to integrate it in our R&D environment, in our sales environment, in our production and supply chain environment. Then there is probably a good portion of companies thinking about it and doing some targeted interventions, doing some piloting and doing a little bit some improvement activities. But I would say most of the companies are still a little bit slow in realizing that we are really in a technology innovation acceleration curve and that there is not too much time to waste. The train is going very fast and the pace of change is like it has never been before. And I think there is another dimension which is really, really important, but what is at times a little bit underrated. I will take the example of, we are working for an Italian company, which is a world-class organization in automated storage systems. And with them, we had the realization that so many organizations are still working with traditional shelving and racking in their warehousing and not utilizing the three-dimensional space in their buildings. We had discussions with some organizations saying that, well, you cannot compare the cost of space in the United States with the cost of space and real estate in Europe. And yes, that's a good point. But what we all need to realize is we will not attract talent to work in industry if we offer a dark environment, a suboptimal environment which is not climate controlled, which is not bright and inviting, where there is no high tech. On the one side, a driving factor for Industry 4.0 is global competition on a product and service level. price, cost, quality. The other war companies are facing is the war for talent.
Right.
Companies not offering that right environment will not attract talent. And when I say talent, I'm thinking about everybody from the CEO of the organization to the operator. It's about everybody. Yeah, whether you are a maintenance technician, whether you are a freshly graduated industrial engineer or mechanical design engineer, whether you are in supply chain, in accounting, everybody wants to find a place where you say, okay, I will spend so many hours a week in that place, or so many days a year. I will spend probably more time at work than with my family. And nowadays, in a competitive work environment, people have choices, so they go where it's best. So embracing Industry 4.0 is not only good for global competition and to be top notch with innovation technology, with product competitiveness and performance, but is also to be heading the game with talents and attracting the best people for your organization.
That's great insight and advice. I always learn so much when I talk to you. And so I really appreciate you coming on. I know there's so much more we could talk about. Hopefully you'll come back and do another episode. There's always a good topic to discuss with you. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise. But for now, I want to give you the last word. I want you to tell us anything else you want to say about how small and medium-sized companies competing in the global industry 4.0 space. What would you like to say to them?
My core message would be to have a reflection about where we are on the journey. Where is the company in terms of how have you done in the last 10 years, last 5 years, in most recent time? Are we winning market share? Are we winning new customers? Are our customers inspired by what we do, our products and services? Are we competitive, and are we able to get the pricing we anticipate and we would love to have for our products? Or are we more reacting on events? Are we in control of our own airplane, or are we more reacting on events happening around? So from that reflection, having a kind of awareness of where the company is today and where the company really should be. And also having the awareness and the realization of, do we have all the knowledge and the resources we need to have this reflection about the future and how to prepare the future? Or is it a good idea to find a strategic partner to have this reflection and the planning process with a team who will be able to enrich the thought process of the own organization? And I think there is real value in having a qualified partner on the side, which can bring also the light and the dimension of how do larger organizations approach such problems, how those issues and problems resolved, looking across industries, yes, looking a little bit beyond the borders of our own plate and learning from others. Having that exchange can be really enriching, provided you have the right strategic partner. So having a reflection about where we are coming from, about where we are heading to, finding out, are we organized and do we have the resources, the skills to develop that future architecture and to train and coach the organization to be fit for the future. Once that clarity is here, developing a strategy for the future, developing a roadmap to the future, and then relentlessly execute until the next planning period, the next strategic period comes, because that's not a one-time exercise, it's a permanent exercise. Yeah, I mentioned a little bit lean earlier. So lean is another one of those concepts which was around well before the concepts of Industry 4.0. And I think here as well, not burning the steps. You don't burn the steps in life as well. Yeah, you go to high school first and then to college, not the other way around.
You have to walk before you can run.
Exactly. And before you really think about using a lot of high tech, mastering the key principles of how to run a modern manufacturing organization. And here lean certainly plays a key role. So doing the right steps, and to your point, first walking before running. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yannick, thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing this knowledge. Thanks so much. And I just want to remind our listeners that Yannick and Altx Consulting can help your company, no matter how big or small, prepare to compete in the quest for the factory of the future.
In global business, you rarely get second chances. Opportunity never favors the unprepared, the ill-equipped, or the inexperienced. When that business-defining moment comes, you can't afford to miss your shot. you'll need experienced partners by your side. If you only get one shot to disrupt the giants, you'll need a skilled team to become the rival they don't expect. If you only get one shot at developing a breakthrough technology, who can back your vision with experience and a proven track record? If you only get one shot to modernize your operation, how can you bring your business up to date without losing your edge? Altx empowers you and your team with the competitive edge you need, providing the business strategy, innovation, and operational excellence support you need to perform at the highest level on a global scale. When opportunity knocks, will you be ready? Altx, amplifier for industry champions.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.